The quarterly board meeting of the Dima family was a tradition built on business bravado, but today's gathering promised something far more significant. I sat in silence at the far end of the polished walnut table, watching my older sister, Bianca, command the room from our grandfather's worn leather chair. She adjusted the silk scarf draped over her navy suit, a picture of curated authority. Q3 revenues are up 22%, she announced, her voice echoing in the hushed room. Dima Holdings is not just surviving, it's thriving. Her gaze, sharp as shattered glass, slid down the table and landed on me. The corners of her lips lifted into her signature, condescending smile. Unlike some of the side projects we've heard about, I calmly tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear and smoothed the sleeve of my simple, tailored blazer, the chosen uniform of the underestimated entrepreneur. If they only knew. The very renewable energy giant poised to dismantle their market, Solstice Dynamics, was mine. Speaking of side projects, my cousin Lorenzo drawled, lounging back in his seat. His suit probably cost more than he believed I earned in a year. How's that little startup of yours, Mia? Still playing in the sandbox while the adults work? A ripple of polite, complicit laughter traveled around the table. The entire Dima clan was present, aunts, uncles, cousins, each with a lofty title and a shared verdict of who I was. The family disappointment, the dreamer, the one who foolishly walked away. A discreet glance at my smartwatch confirmed the alert I was waiting for. Solstice Dynamics stock had jumped another 18% today. At this very moment, my legal team was putting the final touches on the documents to acquire Dima Holdings. 7 years of silent, relentless work, all converging on this single point. Actually, I said, my tone light, we're doing wonderfully. Bianca barked a short, humorless laugh. Last I checked, you had, 30 employees? Quality over quantity, I replied. I thought of my team of brilliant engineers, their innovations already reshaping the energy sector, while Dima Holdings clung to rusting infrastructure and aging contracts. Ever the dreamer, my father sighed from his seat beside Bianca, his voice a mix of pity and reproach. If you had stayed where you belonged, you'd be a director by now, like Lorenzo. I remembered the office I'd left that morning, the top floor of Solstice Tower, all glass and skyline views. An empire built in secret, brick by invisible brick. Mia, Bianca continued, her voice dipping into a smug, confidential tone. We had a fascinating internal briefing yesterday. Rumors are flying that Solstice Dynamics is on a major acquisition spree, snatching up mid-tier energy firms. She leaned forward, her eyes glinting with malicious opportunity. Maybe you should consider selling your little venture to them? At least then you'd finally be part of something consequential. I nearly smiled, recalling the dozens of acquisition deals I'd personally approved, promising startups that chose to join Solstice rather than die competing against it. But Dima Holdings would be different. This would be no friendly merger. I'll think about it, I murmured. Lorenzo snorted, rolling his eyes theatrically. Please. As if Solstice would even glance at your glorified science fair project. Have you seen their new thermal conversion specs? It's revolutionary. Of course I had seen it. I had written them, late into the night in my private lab, while my family believed I was merely tinkering away my potential. Speaking of Solstice, Bianca said, checking her diamond-studded watch with a flourish. Their CEO is supposedly sending an envoy today for preliminary talks. She shot me a smirk designed to slice. Real business, Mia. Happening in rooms you're not in. I looked at my own watch, minimalist, elegant, and logo-free. Right on cue, Bianca's assistant burst through the door, breathless, her eyes wide. Ms. Dima, the CEO of Solstice Dynamics is here. They didn't send a representative. Bianca stood abruptly, smoothing her jacket. Where are they? Right here, I said, rising to my feet. A dead, absolute silence swallowed the room. I opened my leather portfolio, withdrew a folder stamped with the sleek silver logo of Solstice Dynamics, and placed it on the polished table with deliberate calm. I suppose I should have mentioned it sooner. Lorenzo's crystal water glass clattered from his hand, ice skittering across the wood. On Bianca's face, a storm of emotions raced, confusion, then shock, then dawning, panicked fear as I laid my corporate identification next to the folder. She choked out. This can't be. Mia Dima, founder and CEO of Solstice Dynamics. I let the words hang, savoring the visceral crackle of their reality disintegrating. The silence now was tomb-like. A lifetime of condescension, mockery, and dismissal erased in a single, irrevocable moment. And this was merely the opening move. Bianca found her voice first, clinging to disbelief. This is a joke. Solstice is a billion-dollar entity. 10.4 billion as of this morning's opening bell, I corrected softly. Would you like to review the quarterly filings? Our legal team is prepared to share them. As Lorenzo fumbled for his phone, I raised a hand. Actually, your legal team has already been in contact. For the past 4 months, while you were amused by my little company, Solstice Dynamics has been acquiring a controlling stake in Dima Holdings through a series of shell corporations. I opened my laptop and connected it to the conference room screen. A stark, undeniable ownership chart glowed behind me. As of 9 a.m. today, Solstice Dynamics controls 48% of Dima's voting stock, I stated, my voice flat and calm. The color drained completely from Bianca's face. She stared, uncomprehending, at the figures. Impossible. We would have known. Yes, I replied. I see clarity in every word. Just as you knew about the critical failures in your decades-old grid? Or that your primary clients are already in negotiations to adopt Solstice's renewable platforms. My father's hand, always steady, always assured, trembled as he reached for his glass. Mia, sweetheart, he said, his voice frail. Let's discuss this privately. As a family. Family. I let out a quiet, mirthless laugh. You mean the family that voted me off the board 7 years ago? Or the one that appointed Bianca interim CEO after grandfather's death, despite the succession plan naming us both? The memory was a fresh cut, an emergency meeting called while I was advocating for the future at a Berlin energy summit, Bianca's cold smile as she declared my vision too radical. We were protecting the company. Lorenzo interjected, his voice sharp. Protecting it? I switched the screen to a new slide. Market share graphs and performance metrics illuminated the room. Solstice Dynamics now dominates the very sectors you called reckless. The next-gen storage, the grid integration tech, the solutions your clients are desperate for. I traced the soaring lines on the display. This is what you protected them from. My uncle Vittorio, silent until now, leaned forward, his expression grave. What do you want, Mia? What do I want? I slowly walked to the head of the table, to the space our grandfather had once filled, where Bianca now Saturday. I want full control of Dima Holdings. Every board seat. Every executive title. Every single vote. You can't just steal our company. Bianca shrieked, launching to her feet. Her chair crashed against the wall. Your company? I arched a brow. The company that has lost nearly 40% of its market value under this leadership? The company being strangled by obsolete thinking and short-term greed. I placed a dense binder on the table. These are the terms. Solstice Dynamics will absorb Dima Holdings. The current leadership will resign. Immediately. Bianca grabbed the documents, her hands shaking. These terms are a dismantling. You're not acquiring us, you're erasing us. No, I said, my tone softening to something colder than anger. I am salvaging the last fragments of our grandfather's legacy. The legacy you've been auctioning off, piece by piece, while congratulating yourselves on hollow victories. My watch vibrated, a single, silent pulse. The press release was live. Within the hour, the world would know Solstice Dynamics had taken its greatest rival. And they would know the mysterious CEO who engineered it was the Dima family's greatest shame. The documents require signatures today, I continued, my voice clear and unyielding. Your creditors are not patient. And your clients have already chosen their future. Predator, my father whispered, the word trembling. He looked helplessly at Bianca, confusion and fear warring in his eyes. Bianca, what is she talking about? I answered with an icy half-smile. Should we discuss the emergency loans you took to meet payroll? The supplier payments you've deferred for months? Or shall we delve into the creative accounting that's papering over a foundation that's already crumbling? I let the questions hang in the air. How many weeks of liquidity do you truly have left? Bianca sank into her chair as if her bones had dissolved. The color drained from her face, leaving behind a mask of ash. Her once unshakable confidence had evaporated. How long, she whispered, the words scraping from her throat. How long have you been planning this? Since the day, I replied, my voice low and even, this board decided I was unworthy of our name. While you hosted galas and played corporate monarchs, I was building something tangible. Something revolutionary. Something that would have made our Nana beam with pride. Beside her, Lorenzo frantically scrolled through the acquisition terms on his tablet, his composure shattered. These terms. They're a total surrender. Our identity, our authority. As I surrendered mine, I cut in, my gaze unwavering. The distinction is, I used my exile as a foundation. I built anew. And you? I swept my eyes across their stricken faces. You did nothing but polish a gilded frame around a rotting portrait. You mistook nostalgia for strategy. A leaden silence descended, thick and suffocating. Sign the documents, I said. My voice dropped, becoming softer and infinitely colder. Or would you prefer I begin a detailed presentation? I have files on every questionable transaction, every backroom handshake. I met the gaze of each board member who had raised a hand against me 7 years prior. In fact, they've already seen it. I let a beat pass. While you were amusing yourselves with gossip about my hobby, I was in quiet meetings, showing them the unvarnished autopsy of Dima Holdings. They've seen the decay. They demand a cure. As if on cue, Ashley Bennett, our most influential independent shareholder, lifted her chin. Her voice was clear and carried no apology. The board has reviewed the Solstice proposal in full, alongside the forensic analysis of the current executive team's performance. The vote is in favor. Bianca shot up from her seat, the movement violent and unsteady. You can't do this. We are Dima. This is our. You were Dima, I corrected, the words quiet and final. Now you are an underperforming asset of Solstice Dynamics. And given the operational metrics, a deep and likely painful restructuring will be required. My father shifted tactics. His eyes glistened with manufactured tears, catching the diffused conference room lighting. Mia, please. Think of your grandfather. Think of the family. He would be heartbroken to see us torn apart like this. A dry, humorless chuckle escaped me. Grandfather would have seen the truth. He built an empire from a workbench and a stubborn dream. He understood real creation. Just as I do. I let my gaze sweep the opulent room. You turned his life's work into an exclusive social club, where the only innovation was in self-congratulation. My watch pulsed against my wrist, a second, decisive vibration. The news was now public. On the muted screen in the corner, urgent banners flashed. Solstice Dynamics seizes control of Dima Holdings in hostile acquisition. The anchor's silent mouth moved. Then the closed captioning scrolled. In a shocking revelation, the previously anonymous CEO behind the green energy titan is Mia Dima, former heir to the Dima fortune, ostracized from the board 7 years ago. The deal, valued at $2.1 billion. Bianca stumbled toward the wall, fumbling for the remote to kill the feed. It was a futile, pathetic gesture. The truth was already in the wild. Her face was the color of parchment. This isn't real, Lorenzo breathed, staring at the screen. Your valuation, it's a bubble. A market trick. Your board's fear of exactly that is noted in the annex, I said sharply. But rest assured, Solstice's engineering teams are exceptionally adept at extracting value from failing systems. Competent personnel from Dima may apply for positions, pending a rigorous review. Apply? Bianca echoed, the word a hollow whisper. For roles in my company, I affirmed, my tone deceptively gentle. And frankly, given the strategic missteps documented here, I tapped the binder, I would advise exploring opportunities elsewhere. Solstice has a culture of excellence and integrity. We're rather particular. The following hour passed in a numb procession of scratched signatures, whispered legal consultations, and the profound avoidance of eye contact. One by one, my relatives signed away their power, their titles becoming meaningless ink on a page. The dynasty they believed was carved in stone had been revealed to be a sandcastle, and the tide I had meticulously engineered had finally arrived. As the last lawyer snapped a binder shut, my father made his final, desperate play. His voice was a frayed thread of sentiment. "We're still family, Mia. Blood is thicker than water. There must be a compromise." I stood, taking my time to adjust the cuffs of my jet black blazer, a garment whose exquisite cut and fabric now broadcast a silent, devastating message about my true stature. "Family," I repeated, letting the word sit in the sterile air. "I was family when you convened the will reading without me. When you," I turned to Bianca, "toasted to my phase at Christmas, while everyone laughed. When the narrative became that my ambition was a symptom of instability, not a trait I inherited from grandfather himself. We were trying to protect the legacy." Bianca cried out, a last, defiant spark. "No," I stated, the word absolute. "You were protecting your seats at the head of the table. Your bonuses. Your carefully curated illusion of superiority." I collected my things and gave a slight nod to the security detail now positioned at the door. "Now you are free to observe what genuine achievement looks like. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to remove your personal effects. My transition team will supervise," I added, "to ensure all intellectual property and records remain where they belong." Defeated, they filed out, a procession of slumped shoulders and shattered pride. Lorenzo hesitated at the threshold, turning back. His voice was barely audible, stripped of all its former arrogance. "How?" he asked. "How did you do it right under our noses?" I permitted a small, closed-lipped smile to surface, a brief window to the years of hidden labor, strategic patience, and calculated silence. "I learned from the masters," I said quietly. "You taught me, through every dismissal and every sneer, precisely the leader I refused to become. For that education, I suppose I should thank you." The next morning, I arrived before dawn at the headquarters that now bore my name in law as well as spirit. Against the steel-gray sky, crews were already at work. The heavy, gilded letters of Dima Holdings were being carefully unbolted from the granite facade. In their place, rising with silent efficiency, were the sleek, chromed characters of Solstice Dynamics. The physical unmooring of a dynasty. Inside, the quiet hum of a new order was underway. My team moved through the corridors with purposeful calm, technicians migrating data from antiquated servers, HR specialists evaluating personnel against a new standard of merit, project managers mapping moribund initiatives onto our agile platforms. The building itself seemed to exhale, shedding the stale air of complacency. My phone was a persistent, buzzing anchor in my pocket. A torrent of notifications, pleading texts, voicemails thick with accusation or shaky negotiation, missed calls from numbers I hadn't deleted only out of a sense of historical record. I highlighted them all and forwarded the entire digital cacophony to my legal department. My task was not negotiation, it was reconstruction. A week later, the transformation was no longer just operational, but personal. I sat behind the desk that had once been my grandfather's. The morning sun poured through the tall windows, laying a blade of light across the polished surface, now holding my reports, my blueprints, my vision. I leaned back and looked up at his portrait, still hanging where he'd placed it. The kind, steely eyes seemed to look directly into mine. "I did it, no," I whispered to the quiet room. "I saved it. The legacy, if not the vessel." I had preserved the essence of what he built, the courage to create, the imperative to evolve, by dismantling the hollow monument it had become. Beside a stack of patent filings sat a simple silver frame. Inside, preserved under glass, was my first Solstice Dynamics business card. The paper was slightly cheap, the font a little too bold. Mia Dima, founder. It was a relic from a time when the company was a whispered idea shared between 3 people in a borrowed garage. I kept it there, not as a trophy, but as a compass. A reminder that empires most often rise not from palaces, but from the fertile ground of disregard. The external world, of course, had its own narrative. The headlines were dramatic. The Dima downfall. The secret heiress. A $2.1 billion corporate coup. For the media, it was a splendid drama of revenge. But they mistook the aftermath for the motive. For me, it was never about vengeance. It was a demonstration. Proof that the future is not forged by those who desperately polish the past, but by those who have the courage to walk away from a broken table and build a better one. That is why I chose the name Solstice. It signifies a turning point, an end that contains within it the undeniable promise of a new beginning. They believed casting me out was a conclusion. They never imagined it was an ignition. In stripping me of a name, they forced me to find my own substance. In denying me a seat at their table, they compelled me to forge my own steel. Now, when I stand in that same conference room, the air now clear, the walls seeming to have absorbed the shock of that pivotal meeting, I sometimes feel the ghost of their laughter. I recall the precise tilt of Bianca's condescending smile, the dismissive wave of Lorenzo's hand. And in those moments, I feel not anger, but a profound clarity. True success is not the act of shouting "you are wrong" into the faces of your detractors. It is the quiet, undeniable reality of a world operating on your terms, a living testament that you were right all along. I'm told the Dima family still convenes its quarterly gatherings. The venues are reportedly rented conference rooms in mid-tier hotels. The agendas are said to be brief, concerning dwindling trust funds and the management of residual assets. Occasionally, an envelope arrives at my office, a thick, cream-colored invitation to a holiday gala, a wedding anniversary, a thinly veiled olive branch extended from a great and careful distance. My response is always the same, and it requires no note. I have my assistant send over that morning's press release, the announcement of a new grid storage breakthrough, the certification of our net positive energy campus, the latest valuation figures from the market close. No words are necessary. Achievement is its own dialect, and it speaks in a voice that silences all others. Let this be the final lesson, then, from my story to anyone who has ever been sidelined, mocked, or told to aim lower, consider your underestimation a sacred kind of fuel. It is the concentrated energy of others' blindness. Let it power you. Let it propel you past their ceilings, through their walls, and into the open sky of your own making. Build not to spite them, but because the world they cannot imagine is waiting for you to materialize it. M.